Hello, everyone. Good evening. So, welcome to the second day of the crash course. So, today we'll be dealing with biological basis of behavior, and my name is Tina Benny. So, biological basis of behavior or physiology is a very, very important topic for your MPhil entrance exams. So, you should thoroughly go through biological basis of behavior before you go for the exams, okay? So, as you know, biological basis of behavior is a very vast topic. So, teaching all of it together today is not possible. So, we'll be dealing with a very small portion, the nervous system. To be specific, the central nervous system, its structure and functions. So, even when you take central nervous system, it is a vast topic. There are a lot of parts, subparts, and a lot of functions related to it. So, we'll just go briefly to all the different brain parts and nothing in detail. We'll just make a surface understanding of all the structures. Okay, so let's start. So the nervous system can be broadly classified into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so we'll be dealing with central nervous system. Before that, let me give you an intro of peripheral nervous system also. So the peripheral nervous system can be divided into somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. So your central nervous system is the spinal cord and the brain. And what does peripheral nervous system do? Peripheral nervous system connects your central nervous system to the rest of the body. Okay, so peripheral nervous system consists of somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Now, what is somatic nervous system? Somatic nervous system consists of sensory neurons and motor neurons. So what are these sensory neurons and what are these motor neurons? Sensory neurons are also called afferent neurons and motor neurons are also called efferent neurons. Okay, sensory neurons are called afferent, it is A, and motor neurons are called efferent, E, efferent neurons. So let me tell you what these neurons are. So basically there are three kinds of nerve cells, which are sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons. Okay, which are the three kinds of nerve cells? Sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons. Among these, sensory and motor neurons are found in the peripheral nervous system, in the somatic nervous system. While the interneurons are present in the brain and spinal cord, to be specific, that is the central nervous system. Okay, so don't get confused. Interneurons are present in your central nervous system and the sensory and motor neurons are present in your peripheral nervous system. So what does the sensory and motor neurons do? So sensory neurons carry sensory informations from your sensory receptors to the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, sensory neurons carry sensory information from sensory receptors to the brain and spinal cord. And motor neurons, what do? They carry motor information from the brain or spinal cord to the muscles. And what are the functions of interneurons? Interneurons are basically for your reflexive behaviors. Say, for example, you touch something hot, you automatically have a reflex action of taking your hands back. That is because of your interneurons. So how does this mechanism work? So suppose I touch something hot. So when I touch something hot, there are sensory receptors in my hands and sensory neurons carry the sensory information to the spinal cord and the brain. So the spinal cord has interneurons and the brain has interneurons. Now, you're touching something hot and you need a response quickly, and your spinal cord is nearer to your hands. So the interneurons in the spinal cord sends motor information back to your hands so that you can take your hands from the hot object and you don't have to wait for your brain to respond to it. But it doesn't mean that the brain doesn't get the information. Brain do get the information, but since your spinal cord is closer to your hands and you need a quick response, you're touching a hot object, you have to have a quick response. So interneurons from your spinal cord sends information to your hands to take your hands back. So that happens when you do a reflexive behaviors. Okay. Is it clear? Sensory neurons, motor neurons, and interneurons. Okay. So that is with the somatic nervous system. Now moving on to the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system, it is Walter Cannon who did majority of the studies in autonomic nervous system, and autonomic nervous system performs automatic functions. So remember it like this, autonomic performs automatic functions. So your respiration, your breathing, your digestion, all those automatic functions are performed by your autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system consists of sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the functions of these sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system are the opposites. Okay, sympathetic nervous system increases your heart rate, parasympathetic nervous system decreases your heart rate. If sympathetic nervous system inhibits digestion, parasympathetic nervous system increases the digestion. So they are antagonists. They act exactly opposite to each other. So when does sympathetic nervous system become active? When you face a stressful situation, when you are to do a fight or flight response, it is a sympathetic nervous system that plays a role. The sympathetic nervous system increases your heart rate, your respiration increases, it inhibits digestion, and it causes an adrenaline rush in you. So the neurotransmitter implicated in sympathetic nervous system is adrenaline. You have an adrenaline rush in you. Suppose you see a dog, coming in, you're scared of dogs, you need to run. So what happens there? It is your sympathetic nervous system that gets activated. You have an adrenaline rush. Everything in you increases, your heart rate increases, your respiration increases, all those increases, and you run away. So that is because of your sympathetic nervous system. Now, after all this heart rate increased, all those have to come down. You need the parasympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic nervous system helps you conserve energy. Okay, it helps in the resting phase. So the neurotransmitter implicated in parasympathetic nervous system is acetylcholine. Okay, so it is acetylcholine neurotransmitter implicated in parasympathetic nervous system, and it is adrenaline that is implicated in sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so this is the basic structure of nervous system. Nervous system can be divided into central nervous system and PNS, peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of spinal cord and brain. The PNS consists of somatic nervous systems and autonomic nervous systems. Somatic nervous systems consist of sensory neurons and motor neurons. And autonomic nervous system consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So going in detail to the central nervous system. Central nervous system consists of brain and the spinal cord. Now we will be dealing with the brain. So brain can be classified into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Okay. So under forebrain, you have telencephalon and diencephalon. Under midbrain, you have mesencephalon, and under hindbrain, you have metencephalon and myelencephalon. I know this is quite confusing, but once you get an idea of this, it becomes easy. Okay, and it's very important to know the basic structure of the nervous system. It becomes more easier to connect and learn the functions. Okay, so under forebrain, you have telencephalon and diencephalon. Under midbrain, you have mesencephalon. Under hindbrain, you have metencephalon and myelencephalon. So under telencephalon, you have cerebral cortex, you have basal ganglia, hippocampus, and amygdala. Now, these are not the only structures that comes under telencephalon. Don't think like that. There are other structures, but we'll be focusing on the basic or the most important structures. But there are other structures also. Okay. So telencephalon consists of cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, hippocampus, and amygdala. Diencephalon consists of the thalamus and hypothalamus. Mesencephalon consists of tectum and tegmentum. Metencephalon consists of pons and cerebellum. Myelencephalon consists of the medulla. Okay. So we said we can divide brain into basically three divisions: the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. So the look at the picture there. The orange part you're seeing is the forebrain, the green portion is the midbrain, and the pink portion is the hindbrain. So let's start off with the hindbrain. So hindbrain is where the brain meets the spinal cord. That's where you have the hindbrain. And the functions of hindbrain. Hindbrain performs all our vital functions. That is our breathing, our digestion, our sleeping and waking cycles, our balance, our motor coordination. All our vital functions are performed by the hindbrain. And it is thus the hindbrain that is very essential for our survival because it involves our breathing. So without breathing, we can't survive. So the structure that is very implicated in our survival function is the hindbrain. Okay. And moving on to the midbrain. Above the hindbrain, you have midbrain. And midbrain is responsible for sensory motor reflexes. Your reflexes are performed in your midbrain. And it happens by processing the visual as well as the auditory information. Okay. Now, moving on to the forebrain. Forebrain performs the complex functions. All your complex functions are handled by your forebrain, including your intelligence, your memory, your planning, like that. All your executive functions, all your complex functions are performed by a forebrain. If you have to make a serious discussion, a serious decision, it happens because of your forebrain. Okay, so these are the basic three divisions of the brain: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. What does hindbrain do? Your survival functions, your breathing and all your functions which are very important for your survival. Midbrain does your sensory motor reflexes. And forebrain handles your memory, your emotion, your intelligence. And forebrain is a region which has the greatest influence on human behavior because all our decisions, all our plannings are taken because of the forebrain. And forebrain is not necessary for your survival. What is necessary for your survival? It is hindbrain and midbrain, because midbrain handles your reflexes. What is important for your survival is the hindbrain and midbrain. Forebrain is not needed. It is not very much necessary for your survival. Okay. Now, the first brain structures to develop are hindbrain and midbrain. Why so? As I told before, they are for your survival functions. And for the same reason is that they are located below and you have forebrain above. It was the first structures that got developed is the hindbrain and the midbrain. And these two structures together, we call it brainstem. And brainstem is referred to as the most primitive region of the brain. Okay. And the next region that evolved or developed is the limbic system. Now, what is limbic system? Limbic system is a group of interconnected structures of the brain. And it basically deals with your emotions and your memory. It also it also handles your aggression, fear, pleasure, pain. All these functions are handled by your limbic system. So understand that limbic system is a group of interconnected structures which is mostly associated with emotion and memory. Now, the most recently developed part of the human brain is cerebral cortex, which is also called the neocortex. Okay, the most recent developed part is the cerebral cortex or the neocortex, which forms an external covering or an outer covering of your cerebral hemispheres. And it performs functions, starting from your language processing to your problem solving abilities, from impulse control to long-term planning. All these functions are handled by your cerebral cortex. Okay, so the first brain structures that developed was your hindbrain and midbrain, which are very essential for your survival, and together they are called the brainstem. The next part which developed was your limbic system, which is a group of structures which is basically associated with emotion and memory. And the most recent part of the brain that got developed is the cerebral cortex. Okay. Now, we'll look in detail to the different brain regions, starting off with the hindbrain. So hindbrain, we have medulla, pons, and cerebellum. So what does your medulla do? So in general, we said hindbrain performs your survival functions, or your most vital functions are performed by your hindbrain. Now, what does medulla do in specific? Medulla regulates vital functions such as breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure. Okay, so the basic vital functions such as breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure is regulated by your medulla. And then what does pons do? Pons contains sensory and motor tracts between the cortex and the medulla. So pons have sensory and motor tracts. Okay, now cerebellum. What does cerebellum do? Cerebellum is a part of the brain which helps us maintain a posture. Our body balance is maintained by the cerebellum and it coordinates our body movements. When you consume alcohol, it is your cerebellum that gets affected. Now you have seen people consuming alcohol and they can't walk steady. They have a little, they are a little clumsy because it is the cerebellum that gets affected after the consumption of alcohol. So remember, next time when you consume alcohol and you can't walk steady, it is your cerebellum that is getting affected. Okay, so that's all with hindbrain. Only three structures in the hindbrain: medulla, pons, and cerebellum. What does medulla do? Your breathing, your heart rate, and your blood pressure. What does pons do? It has sensory and motor tracts. What does the cerebellum do? It maintains your balance, your body posture, and your body movements. And when you consume alcohol, it is your cerebellum that gets implicated. Moving on. Now, so that was with the hindbrain. Now we have midbrain. Now the structure that connects the hindbrain with the midbrain is the reticular formation. So if you see the image, you have a pink line over there. That is the reticular formation, which connects the hindbrain with the midbrain. Okay. So reticular formation, the basic function of reticular formation is that it regulates our arousal and alertness. Our sleeping and waking functions are all controlled by your reticular formation. And when you take anesthesias, anesthesia has a downing effect or a depressing effect on your reticular formation, and that's why you feel unconscious. Okay, so with regard to reticular formation, what you have to remember is arousal, alertness, and attention. The three A's are related to reticular formation. Which are the three A's? Arousal, alertness, and attention. So what is reticular formation? It connects the hindbrain to the midbrain. And what are the functions of reticular formation? It regulates your arousal and alertness. That is, your sleeping and waking patterns are controlled by your reticular formation. And when you receive anesthesia, what happens? It has a downing effect on your reticular formation, and hence you feel unconscious. The three A's related to reticular formation are arousal, alertness, and attention. Now, midbrain. Now, what does midbrain do? So midbrain, we said it has pectum and tegmentum. So midbrain has a lot of structures. So midbrain has a lot of structures. We won't be going in detail with all the structures. We'll be just looking into two structures under tectum, that is superior colliculi and inferior colliculi, and two structures under tegmentum, that is substantia nigra and red nucleus. So what does superior colliculi do? Superior colliculi contains a visual informations. Our visual sensory input is received by the superior colliculi, and our information from our auditory systems are received by the inferior colliculi. Okay, so it is inferior colliculi which respond to sudden noises. Reflex actions to sudden noises are performed by inferior colliculus. While if it is a visual input, the responses come from the superior colliculus. Okay. So tectum has superior colliculi and inferior colliculi. Superior colliculi for visual reflexes and inferior for auditory reflexes. Now tectum has substantia nigra and red nucleus. what does substantia nigra do? It releases dopamine into your basal ganglia. Okay, substantia nigra releases dopamine to the basal ganglia, and red nucleus, it connects with cerebellum for coordination of movement. So we just learned with cerebellum maintains our posture and our balance and our movement. So red nucleus along with cerebellum coordinates movement. Okay, so that's with midbrain. Now moving on to the third region of the brain, that is forebrain. Forebrain can be divided into two cerebral hemispheres, that is the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. We'll be looking into that after a few slides. So moving on to the structures in the forebrain, the first structure we are going to see is basal ganglia. What does basal ganglia do? It coordinates muscle movement as it receives information from the cortex and relays this information via the extrapyramidal motor system to the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so what happens here is basal ganglia receives information from the cortex. Okay, it receives information related to muscle movements. Okay, all the information related to muscle movements are received by the basal ganglia from the cortex, and it is sent to the brain and the spinal cord through extrapyramidal motor system. Now, what is this extrapyramidal motor system? Extrapyramidal motor system is that part which gathers information about body positions. Okay, all the information about our body positions are gathered by the extrapyramidal motor system from different areas and the basal ganglia. So extrapyramidal motor system, what does it do? It gathers information about body position from the basal ganglia, and this information is sent from the basal ganglia to your brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so and that is how you can regulate your movements. And one disorder, one disease that is associated with basal ganglia is Parkinson's disease. What is Parkinson's disease? Parkinson's disease, it is, it is a movement disorder. You have, tremors and jerky movements when you have Parkinson's disease. And why do you have those movement problems? Because it is your basal ganglia that gets affected. And another disorder related to basal ganglia is schizophrenia. Now, why is schizophrenia? Because you can connect it like this. Schizophrenia, which is a neurotransmitter most implicated in schizophrenia, it is dopamine. And before I told you that dopamine is being released into the basal ganglia. Don't you remember? See, we told here, substantia nigra, what does it do? It releases dopamine to the basal ganglia, and dopamine is most implicated in the case of schizophrenia. And hence, when you have a problem with basal ganglia, when you have schizophrenia, there's a high chance that your basal ganglia is affected because you have dopamine there. Okay, so that is the first structure in forebrain, basal ganglia. The second one is thalamus. So what does thalamus do? Thalamus is called the way station or the relay station of the brain. Why is it called so? Why is it called the relay station? Because all the incoming sensory information goes into the thalamus except for smell. Okay, point to be noted. Thalamus receives all the sensory information and hence it is called the relay station, but it does not receive information on smell. Okay. And after receiving these sensory impulses, the thalamus sorts them and sends into its appropriate areas. Okay, so that is why thalamus is called relay station or the way station, because all the sensory information passes through the thalamus except for smell. Okay. Now moving on to the next parts of the forebrain, you have amygdala and you have hippocampus. Now, amygdala is an almond-shaped part. Okay, if you see the image, you have a small red spot there. That is the amygdala. It is almond-shaped. And amygdala, amygdala is most closely associated with the emotional responses. When you hear emotion, the first part that has to come into your mind is amygdala. All your emotional responses are handled by your amygdala, and your fear responses, your fear conditioning, your aggressive responses are all associated with amygdala. Okay, of it, the most important is your emotional responses and your fear conditioning that happens in the amygdala. Now, the next structure is hippocampus. So we told amygdala is almond shaped and hippocampus is seahorse shaped. Okay, you can again see the image there. You have the red portion which is called the hippocampus. It is seahorse shaped. And hippocampus is involved in formation of long-term memories. Okay, so what you are learning today, if it has to go into a long-term memory, you need the help of hippocampus. Okay, and your spatial processing and navigation is also handled by your hippocampus. Okay, so what are the functions of hippocampus? Formation of long-term memories and spatial processing and navigation. Okay, now another important, very important region of the forebrain is hypothalamus. So till now, what all did we learn? Most of the structures, more number of structures are there in your forebrain. So we learned basal ganglia, we learned thalamus, we learned amygdala, and we learned hippocampus. Now moving on to hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a very important portion. Okay, so the functions of hypothalamus can be remembered as 4 F's. Which are the 4 F's? Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sexual function. Okay, hypothalamus performs a lot of functions in your body. Your homeostasis, your body temperature is being maintained. How? It is the hypothalamus. It is a hypothalamus that maintains homeostasis in your body, that regulates your body temperature. It is the hypothalamus. Now, not only in the case of temperature, your water balance in your body, the water balance maintained in your body through a process known as osmoregulation. Okay, osmoregulation means maintaining of water balance in your body, and it is performed by osmoreceptors with the help of hypothalamus. So hypothalamus also has a role in maintaining water balance in your body. Now, drive behaviors, the different drives that you have, your hunger drives, your thirst drives, your sexual drives, all these are handled by the hypothalamus. Now, when you face stress, you have a fight or flight response, right? When you have tension, when you have a little stressful situation, you have a fight or flight response. And even that time, what happens there? Your autonomic nervous system functions through the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It is your autonomic nervous system that acts there. And even that happens with the help of hypothalamus. And all your hormones in the body are released by the endocrine glands. And this endocrine glands are regulated by the hypothalamus. So a lot of functions for the hypothalamus, right? So what are the basic functions of hypothalamus? The 4 F's: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sexual functioning. Okay, which are they? Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sexual functioning. Which part maintains the homeostasis in your body? The temperature levels in your body are maintained by the hypothalamus. The water balance in your body, a process known as osmoregulation, performed by osmoreceptors, happens with the help of hypothalamus. Now, your drive behaviors, your hunger, thirst, sexual behaviors, all these are maintained by your hypothalamus. And then your endocrine system, which releases all your hormones, are also regulated by the hypothalamus. Your autonomic nervous system, which acts on when you face a stressful situation, also with the help of hypothalamus. Okay. Now, subdivisions of hypothalamus, the parts of hypothalamus are lateral hypothalamus, ventromedial hypothalamus, and anterior hypothalamus. Okay, which are they? Lateral, ventromedial, and anterior hypothalamus. Now, what does lateral hypothalamus do? Lateral hypothalamus, LH as you can call, what happens is your hunger feelings, the feeling that you are feeling hungry, that you need food, happens because of the lateral hypothalamus. Okay, now if lateral hypothalamus is a region because of which you feel hungry, what happens if there's a lesion to that part? Then you don't feel hungry, right? If you don't have lateral hypothalamus, if there's a damage to lateral hypothalamus, you no longer feel hungry. So that leads or that causes aphasia. What is aphasia? It is the lack of feeling of hunger. Okay, so you can remember it like this. Lateral hypothalamus, LH, a lesion to this part leads to lack of hunger, LH. You can relate it and remember it like that. Okay. Now, lateral hypothalamus, apart from being the hunger center, it also has another function. It plays a role in rage and fighting behaviors. You feel aggressive, you feel, anger in part because of the lateral hypothalamus. Okay. Now, moving on to the next part, it is ventromedial hypothalamus, VH, as you can call it. It is ventromedial hypothalamus. What is ventromedial hypothalamus? What is the function of ventromedial hypothalamus? It is the satiety center. You're having food and at a point you feel, I've had enough, I'm full. That feeling of satiation comes because of the presence of ventromedial hypothalamus. And a lesion to this part of the hypothalamus, a lesion to the ventromedial hypothalamus leads to, when there's a damage to ventromedial hypothalamus, there won't be a feeling of satiation. You never feel full. So that leads to obesity or hyperphagia. That is, you're very hungry. You keep on eating. You don't have an urge to stop. So you keep on eating. It causes obesity or hyperphagia. Okay. So, make sure you don't get confused with the functions of lateral hypothalamus and ventral hypothalamus. Remember it like that. Lateral hypothalamus, a lesion causes LH. It lacks hunger. Ventromedial hypothalamus, a lesion to it causes VH, very hungry, that is obesity. Okay. The next part of hypothalamus is anterior hypothalamus. So what does anterior hypothalamus do? A stimulation in the anterior hypothalamus causes, intense sexual behaviors, aggressive sexual behaviors. When the hypothalamus is stimulated, the animals are willing to include inanimate objects for sexual behavior. So a damage to the same region, a damage to anterior hypothalamus would lead to an inhibition in sexual activity, of course. And that is, it makes you asexual. Okay. So anterior hypothalamus, what is it? A stimulation of anterior hypothalamus leads to increased sexual behaviors. And so a damage to the same portion leads to asexual behaviors. Now, a study related to the hypothalamus, wherein the researchers removed the cerebral cortex of cats. Okay, what did researchers remove? They removed only cerebral cortex of rats. They kept the hypothalamus intact, untouched. They only removed cerebral cortex. And what happened? The cats showed pseudo-aggressive behaviors called sham rage. That is, they showed, very aggressive behaviors, but it was random. It wasn't directed to the place of provocation. The cats could not control their aggressive behaviors. Okay, so this happened when the cerebral cortex part of the cats were removed and the hypothalamus were left intact. They displayed pseudo-aggressive behaviors called sham rage, wherein they showed spontaneous aggressive behaviors, but it was not controlled. They could not control their own aggressive behaviors. But when both the cerebral cortex and the hypothalamus were removed, what happened? There was no aggressive behaviors at all. I mean, a lot of stimulation, a more severe stimulation was required to show an aggressive act. So without the cerebral cortex, we have little control over our aggressive behaviors. But without the hypothalamus, we don't feel angry at all. Okay. So remember that, okay? Without the cerebral cortex, it is just you have no control over your aggressive behaviors, but you have aggressive behaviors. It's just that you cannot control your aggressive behaviors. But without hypothalamus, you don't have aggressive behaviors at all. Okay, so that's with hypothalamus. Under hypothalamus, we said the 4 F's are the basic functions of hypothalamus: feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sexual functioning. Then we said lateral hypothalamus, which is your hunger center; ventromedial hypothalamus, which is your satiety center; anterior hypothalamus, stimulation leads to increased sexual behaviors. Okay, and then we said without your cerebral cortex, you have no control over your aggressive behaviors, but without the hypothalamus, you have no aggressive behaviors at all. Now, the limbic system. So before we said, after hindbrain and midbrain, the part to be developed was limbic system. And what is limbic system? It is a group of interconnected structures basically implicated in emotion and memory. So there are quite few structures in limbic system, of which there's hippocampus, there's amygdala, there's hypothalamus, there's septum. And what is the function of hippocampus? We already discussed what is the function of hippocampus. It is memory processing. It is a formation of long-term memory. As I told you, if you want, all this what you're listening to now, you want it in your long-term memory, hippocampus has to play a role in it. And a study, researchers removed the hippocampus of a patient called HM, a very famous case, HM. His hippocampus was removed to treat epileptic seizures. And what happened? After the removal of the hippocampus, the person could no longer form long-term memories. That is, he had anterograde amnesia. What is anterograde amnesia? Inability to form new memories. HM could no longer form long-term memories. All things he hears decays off very fast. Nothing goes into the long-term memory. Why so? Because his hippocampus was removed. Now the next structure is amygdala. Amygdala, as we told before, it plays a very important role in your emotions, in your aggression, in your fear responses. And Kluwer and Busey, what did they do? They removed amygdala of rats. And what happened? They showed hypersexuality and they had no aggression or fear responses. So without amygdala, you no longer have fear responses. Okay, and they had hypersexuality. And that came to be known as Kluwer-Bucy syndrome. Okay, came to be known as Kluwer-Bucy syndrome. Now, the next part is hypothalamus. Hypothalamus we discussed in detail. It is implicated in your hunger responses, in your thirst, in your maintaining your body temperature, pleasure. It regulates your pituitary gland, your hormones, etc. Moving on to the next part, septum. Now, septum is your pleasure center. A mild stimulation of your septal region causes intensely pleasurable and it is highly sexually arousing. So James Olds and Peter Milner, what did they do? They performed an experiment on rats. Okay, James Olds and Peter Milner performed an experiment on rats. The rats preferred stimulation of their septal region to eating, even after being, even after not being eaten for more than 24 hours. Even after 24 hours without food, rats preferred stimulation of their septal region to eating. So that is how much the septal region, stimulation of the septal region is pleasurable and sexually arousing. Another function of septum is it inhibits aggression. Okay, it inhibits aggression. And if there's a damage to your septum, your aggression is not inhibited. So you lash out, you become very aggressive, and that is called septal rage. Okay, so what is septal rage? Septum plays a role in inhibiting aggression. So a damage to the septal region causes, you become very much angry, you lash out, you have no control over your aggression, and that is septal rage. Okay, so that is with the limbic system. Moving on, we've discussed all the main three regions of the brain: hindbrain, midbrain, and forebrain. Now, if you consider the brain as these three parts, the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem, the cerebrum is the largest part of your brain, and the cerebrum has two hemispheres, the right and the left hemisphere. Okay, this right and left hemisphere, what does it do? Your right hemisphere controls all the functioning in your left side of your body, and your left hemisphere controls all the functions of your right side of the body. Okay, it controls the functions of the opposite sides. So what is right hemisphere? I mean, right hemisphere, what does it handle? Right hemisphere is responsible for more of your creative side, and your left hemisphere is responsible for more of your academic side. Okay, so that is with the right and left hemisphere. So the cerebrum, the largest part of your brain is the cerebrum. It is divided into two hemispheres, the right and left. And each of these hemispheres have four lobes: the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe. Okay, you have your frontal lobe here, you have your parietal lobe, you have your occipital lobe, and you have your temporal lobe. And how do you remember its location? I'll just tell a shortcut of how I remember its location. So it is, I remember it like this, okay? Front pocketil oru tavala. Front pocketil oru tavala. That is frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobe. If you want, you can remember it like that. So these are the four lobes you have: frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes. Now, moving on to all the four lobes. What does your frontal lobe do? So as the name suggests, your frontal lobe is in the front portion of your brain. So this area is where your planning takes place, all your executive functions takes place with your front region. So frontal lobe is responsible for your executive functions, and it is called the control panel of your personality and ability to communicate. So I think you would have heard about this, the case study of Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage met with an accident. He was a railroad worker, and he met with an accident which got his frontal lobe affected. So for those who don't know, just Google it. Okay, Google on Phineas Gage. You can see the image of his head through which the road had penetrated, and it affected his frontal lobe. And after the incident, it was a permanent damage, and after the incident, his personality totally changed. I mean, the people who knew him said that he was completely a different person. All of his personality got changed. So that is, the frontal lobe plays a very important role in your personality. Okay. Now, of the four lobes, the largest lobe is the frontal lobe. It makes 1/3 of your cerebrum. So of the four lobes in the cerebrum, majority, 1/3 of your cerebrum is the what? Frontal lobe. So it is the largest of the lobes in your brain. And frontal lobe of primates and particularly of humans is larger than other species. Okay, our frontal lobes are larger than other species. And why do you think it is so? We have a lot of human skills, right? Language skills, reasoning skills. Those are our human skills. And because of which we have a much larger frontal lobe. And this frontal lobe is also connected to other regions of your brain. So it plays a lot of functions. I mean, all these areas are interconnected. Okay. And frontal lobe is the last area of the brain to mature. Frontal lobe becomes fully developed in your mid-30s. So this is something I've read. I don't know how much, authentic it is, but then I just thought I'll share it with you. I read that we make decisions during our adolescence, during our teenage age. The majority of the decisions we take go wrong. I mean, we end up taking too many stupid decisions. So that's because our frontal lobe is not developed so far that time. It is only in the adulthood phase that our frontal lobe gets developed, and only then you can take proper decisions. Okay, now the functional units in the frontal lobe. So frontal lobe consists of prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, and Broca's area. Okay, so frontal lobe consists of the prefrontal cortex, the motor cortex, and the Broca's area. So what does prefrontal cortex do? It manages your higher cognitive functions. Your executive functions are controlled by your prefrontal cortex, your organization abilities, your planning abilities, your problem solving abilities, your reasoning abilities. All these are controlled by your prefrontal cortex. Then you have the motor cortex. All your voluntary movements and your spatial orientation is controlled by your motor cortex. And then you have Broca's area. What is Broca's area? It is responsible for your speech production. And note that Broca's area is found only in the left hemisphere. In your right frontal lobe, you don't have Broca's area. Broca's area is only in the left frontal lobe. Okay. So these are the three basic structures of frontal lobe: prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, and Broca's area. What does your prefrontal cortex do? The higher cognitive functions are controlled by your prefrontal cortex. Motor cortex controls your voluntary movements, and Broca's area controls your speech production. Okay. So that's with the frontal lobe. I hope frontal lobe is very clear. It's very simple. So the next lobe is parietal lobe. Parietal lobe basically does your somatosensory functions. Now, what is somatosensory functions? The sensations which are not localized are called somatosensory functions. For example, say your sight, your vision sense is localized. It happens only in the eye, so it is localized. While your touch sense is not localized. You can feel touch on every part of your body, so it is not localized, so it is a somatosensory function. Your hearing ability, it is localized. You can hear only through your ears, so that is not a somatosensory function. So I hope somatosensory functions are clear. Somatosensory functions are those sensations which are not localized to a particular body part. Okay, so that includes the sensations of taste, pain, touch, pressure. All these sensations are handled by your parietal lobe. And it is also associated with spatial processing and manipulation. Your ability for map navigation, your 3D orientations are all handled by your parietal lobe. So that's what the parietal lobe. It is basically somatosensory functions. Don't get confused. Somatosensory means those sensations which are not localized to a particular body part. Okay, your eyesight, your hearing, they are not somatosensory because they are localized to a particular sense organ. Okay, the other functions which are not localized, such as taste, pain, touch, pressure, etc., are somatosensory. Now, occipital lobe. Occipital lobe is responsible for your vision. Okay, your visual cortex is situated in the occipital lobe. The visual cortex is also known as striate cortex. So occipital lobe is where you have your visual cortex or the striate cortex, which helps in the vision processing. And then you have your temporal lobe. So temporal lobe, where's the location of the temporal lobe? It is here. You remember, right? Frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. So temporal is close to your ears, so it performs your auditory functions. Okay, so it has the auditory cortex, whereby it performs the auditory functions. And then you have olfactory cortex. What does olfactory cortex do? Smell. And then you have vernix area. What does vernix area do? Vernix area is associated with the processing or comprehension of speech, and that is handled by the vernix area situated in the temporal lobe. Okay, so what does temporal lobe have? Auditory cortex, olfactory cortex, and vernix area. What does auditory cortex do? your auditory abilities, olfactory cortex, your smell, and vernix area, the processing of speech. So these are the 4 lobes. Okay. So which are the 4 lobes? Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe. What does frontal lobe do? Frontal lobe is mainly responsible for your personality and your higher order functions, or your cognitive, your planning functions. All those executive functions are performed by your frontal lobe. And the structures in the frontal lobe are prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, and Broca's area. Broca's area is only in your left hemisphere, in your left frontal lobe. Parietal lobe performs your somatosensory functions, that is, those functions which are not localized to a sensory organ. Occipital lobe has your vision processing, that is your visual cortex or the striate cortex. And temporal lobe has auditory cortex, olfactory cortex, and vernix area. Okay. So is it clear till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Very clear.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Any doubt?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. No doubt, ma'am.
It's very clear, madam. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Can you please once more explain about the septum part?
Septum part. Okay. Okay. So septum is one important area of the limbic system. So septum is basically important. It is basically your pleasure center. A mild stimulation of your septum leads to pleasure feelings or highly arousing sexual feelings. So James Olds and Peter Milner, they conducted a study on rats. So what did they do is rats were placed in a situation where they could self-stimulate their septal region. Okay. And the rats were not given food for over 24 hours. So even after 24 hours without food, the rats preferred septal region stimulation to eating. They did not want to eat. Instead, they wanted their septal regions to be stimulated because it is that pleasure arousing and or sexually arousing is the region of septum. Another function of septum is it inhibits aggression. Okay, so it inhibits aggression. So if your septum is damaged, you no longer can inhibit aggression. So you lash out, you become so angry, and that aggression is called septal rage. Okay. Hello, was it clear? Is septum clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's clear now. Thank you.
Madam, just one quick question. On the left side, it is mentioned that the primary components of amygdala.
Yeah.
Is it the primary components of limbic system?
Yeah. Sorry, that's a typing mistake. Okay, that's
Okay.
primary components of limbic system. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So should we do a quick summary of what we learned today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we basically focused on the nervous system. We said nervous system can be broadly classified into the central nervous system, CNS, and peripheral nervous system, the PNS. So central nervous system consists of spinal cord and the brain, and peripheral nervous system. What does peripheral nervous system do? It connects the central nervous system to the rest of your body. And PNS consists of somatic nervous systems and autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system consists of sensory neurons and motor neurons. And where is your interneurons? It is in the spinal cord and brain. Okay, that you should not get confused. Interneurons are in the central nervous system, while your sensory and motor neurons are in the somatic nervous system, which is part of the peripheral nervous system. Okay, and what does sensory neurons do? It transmits sensory information from your sensory receptors to the brain and spinal cord. And motor neurons transmits motor information from the brain and spinal cord to your muscles. Now, autonomic nervous system consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic. Both these systems are antagonist. That is, they perform opposite functions. Okay. Sympathetic nervous system becomes active when you face a stressful situation, your heart rate increases, all your bodily responses increases as a result of the activation of sympathetic nervous system. While all these get back into your normal state, a resting state, because of your parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, now brain can be divided into forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain consists of telencephalon and diencephalon. Telencephalon includes structures such as cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, hippocampus, and amygdala. Diencephalon includes thalamus and hypothalamus. Midbrain consists of mesencephalon and metencephalon. Midbrain consists of mesencephalon only. Mesencephalon includes tectum and tegmentum. Hindbrain consists of metencephalon and myelencephalon. Metencephalon includes pons and cerebellum. Myelencephalon includes medulla. Okay, so the three brain regions are forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. What does hindbrain do? Your vital functions, your survival functions are handled by your hindbrain. Midbrain has your reflex functions, and your forebrain is your complex functions, intelligence, memory. Such complex functions are performed by your forebrain. The first structure to develop was your hindbrain and midbrain, which together is called the brainstem. Okay, the next part to evolve was your limbic system, and limbic system is a group of interconnected structures. It is mostly associated with emotion and memory. The recent part of the brain to be evolved was a cerebral cortex, also called neocortex. Okay. Now, hindbrain includes medulla, pons, and cerebellum. What does medulla do? Breathing, heartbeat, and blood pressure. Pons, it contains sensory and motor tracts. Cerebellum is a part of the body that maintains your posture and balance, and it coordinates your body movement. So when you consume alcohol, it is your cerebellum that's getting affected, and because of which you lose balance and you can't walk steadily. Now, your hindbrain is connected to your midbrain through reticular formation. The three A's associated with reticular formation is arousal, alertness, and attention. Midbrain consists of tectum and tegmentum. Tectum consists of superior colliculi and inferior colliculi. Superior colliculi contains visual informations, visual reflexes. Inferior colliculi receives auditory related informations. Tegmentum consists of substantia nigra and red nucleus. Substantia nigra releases dopamine into your basal ganglia, and red nucleus, along with cerebellum, it helps in the coordination of movement. Now, forebrain consists of basal ganglia. And what does basal ganglia do? It receives muscle movement information from the cortex, and through the extrapyramidal motor system, it sends information to the brain and the spinal cord. Thalamus is called the relay station or the way station because all the sensory information passes through the thalamus except for smell. Now, amygdala, it is almond shaped, while hippocampus is seahorse shaped. Amygdala is related to your emotional responses, to fear conditioning and memory. Hippocampus, seahorse shaped, it plays an important role in the formation of long-term memories and involves spatial processing and navigation. Hypothalamus, the four F's: feeding, fighting, fleeing, sexual functionings. And it plays a lot of functions such as homeostasis, maintaining water balance, your drive behaviors, secretion of hormones, etc. Lateral hypothalamus is your hunger center. Ventromedial hypothalamus is your satiety center. Anterior hypothalamus stimulation leads to aggressive sexual behaviors. And then we learned about sham rage. Then we in the study, it was concluded that cerebral cortex, if it's removed, you have no control over your aggressive behaviors. But without the hypothalamus, you don't feel angry at all. Now, limbic system, we told septum, amygdala, and hippocampus. Now, the four lobes. The cerebrum is divided into right and left hemispheres, and each hemisphere has four lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Frontal lobe, your executory functions are performed. It involves prefrontal cortex, motor cortex, and Broca's area. Parietal lobe performs your somatosensory functions. Occipital lobe has your visual cortex or the striate cortex, and your temporal lobe has auditory cortex, olfactory cortex, and Wernicke's area. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.